The pizza you ordered to my house? The place where I might not be? The guy who couldn't get a date if dates were magnets and his butt was due north?
For nearly a decade, The Drew Carey Show was one of television's biggest success stories. Millions of viewers tuned in every week. Its stars became household names, and the series generated enough money to make network executives very happy. However, a disastrous long-term network contract would lock ABC into a trap that would put the show in decline. In a desperate attempt to protect their investment, executives pushed aggressive changes meant to save the show. Instead, those decisions only accelerated the damage, pulling the series away from what audiences originally loved. But even that collapse wasn't the strangest part of what happened to the show, because years later, when people went looking for The Drew Carey Show in the streaming era, they discovered the show had disappeared. And the reason why would leave you shocked. The making of The Drew Carey Show. In 1994, comedian Drew Carey and television producer Bruce Helford sat down to create a sitcom that would stand apart from everything else on the air. The landscape was dominated by Seinfeld and Friends, shows about attractive, relatively affluent New Yorkers who worried about dating and social awkwardness rather than paying the rent. Carey and Helford wanted to go in the opposite direction. They designed The Drew Carey Show as an intentional anti-Seinfeld. Instead of glossy urban sophistication, they focused on the blue-collar, paycheck-to-paycheck realities of working-class citizens in Cleveland, Ohio. The clothes would be less fashionable, the apartments would be less spacious, and the problems would be more real. The main character was an explicit extension of Carey's stand-up comedy persona. He played a perpetual middle-management underdog working as an assistant director of personnel at a fictional department store called Winfred Louder. He was not handsome in the traditional sense. He was neither rich nor lucky. He was just a guy trying to get by, and audiences loved him for it. The casting choices that surrounded Carey turned out to be crucial to the show's success. Craig Ferguson was brought in to play Drew's eccentric British boss, Nigel Wick. The character was originally intended as a short-term role, someone who would appear in a few episodes and then disappear. But Ferguson's comedic chemistry with Carey was so immediate and so electric that the writers kept finding reasons to bring him back. Eventually, he was made a series regular, and his character became one of the show's most beloved figures. Ryan Stiles and Diedrich Bader were cast as Drew's two best friends, Louis and Oswald. Both actors had backgrounds in improvisational comedy, which meant they could keep up with Carey's quick wit and find laughs in moments that were not fully scripted. Stiles, in particular, had an established comedic rapport with Carey from his work on Whose Line Is It Anyway? The three men felt like real friends, not just actors playing friends, and that authenticity came through on screen. The most unexpected casting success was Kathy Kinney as Mimi Bobek, the aggressively styled, makeup-heavy antagonist secretary who seemed to exist solely to make Drew's life miserable. Kinney was originally slated to appear in only the pilot episode, a one-off character who would deliver a few jokes and then never be seen again. But the executives who watched the dailies recognized something special. They immediately expanded her role to a permanent co-star, and Mimi became one of the most recognizable and quotable characters in the show's history. The Drew Carey Show officially premiered on ABC on September 13, 1995. The ratings were not explosive, but they were solid. The show pulled strong baseline numbers that comfortably earned it a second season renewal. The secret to its success was its appeal to Midwest demographics, viewers who felt overlooked by the coastal comedies that dominated prime-time schedules. By its fourth season, which aired from 1998 to 1999, the show had become a top 15 television powerhouse. It drew more than 16 million viewers weekly and routinely beat competing networks in its Wednesday night flagship slot. The success allowed Drew Carey to renegotiate his personal salary up to $750,000 per episode, a staggering sum for a man who had started his career doing stand-up in small clubs. The show also shattered sitcom structural norms. It introduced elaborate, big-budget, live-action musical dance numbers that required weeks of rehearsal and coordination. It experimented with live improv episodes where the actors had to react to unexpected events in real time. The Drew Carey Show wanted to push the boundaries of what the format could do. But behind the musical numbers and the high salaries and the 16 million weekly viewers, the production was facing challenges that the public never saw. The same creative ambition that made the show special was also making it incredibly expensive to produce, and the people who controlled the money were starting to ask difficult questions. The Golden Noose contract mistake. One of the major challenges the Drew Carey Show faced was from the network itself. ABC's Standards and Practices division heavily policed the show's blue-collar edge. The network executives who had greenlit the show as an anti-Seinfeld were suddenly uncomfortable with what that actually meant. Writers faced constant battles over jokes about alcohol consumption, which the network worried would encourage underage drinking. Innuendos that had passed without comment on other shows were flagged and cut. Most frustrating of all, the anti-corporate satire aimed at department store structures, which was central to the show's identity, was repeatedly watered down because ABC did not want to offend real-life advertisers. The edge that had made the show fresh and different was being sanded off, one note at a time. Then came the mistake that would eventually kill the show. During season 6, despite early signs that ratings were starting to stabilize rather than grow, ABC executives panicked. They were afraid of losing a flagship asset, a show that had been reliable for years, even if it was no longer breaking records. So they locked in an aggressive, unbreakable 3-season network renewal that extended the show through seasons 7, 8, and 9. The deal was designed to keep the Drew Carey Show on ABC's schedule no matter what, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. The problem was the financial terms. Under this strict agreement, ABC was legally bound to pay Warner Brothers Television an astronomical licensing fee of $3 million per single episode. This was in the early 2000s, before inflation made such numbers seem almost routine. The contract guaranteed that amount regardless of the show's eventual viewership performance. If 16 million people watched, ABC paid $3 million. If 6 million people watched, ABC still paid $3 million. There was no escape clause, no renegotiation option, and no way out. Looking to modernize the premise and justify the enormous expense, the creative team made a decision that would backfire catastrophically. They shifted Drew Carey's character away from the department store and into an online .com startup company. The thinking was that the internet boom was changing the world, and the show needed to change with it. Drew would leave Winfred Louder behind and enter the fast-paced, confusing world of Silicon Valley-style entrepreneurship. It sounded clever in the writer's room, but the problem was timing. The real-world .com bubble burst almost exactly as the show was making this transition. Companies that had been valued at billions of dollars were suddenly worthless. Investors who had been throwing money at any startup with a website were running for the exits. The cultural moment that the show was trying to capture evaporated overnight. The new premise felt instantly dated, awkward, and completely unappealing to the show's core blue-collar fan base. Viewers who had connected with Drew because he was a working-class guy like them did not want to watch him fumble through the world of tech startups. They wanted him back behind the desk at Winfred Louder, fighting with Mimi and trying to get through another week. The ratings collapse was immediate and brutal. The show fell out of the top 30 Nielsen rankings almost overnight. Shows that had been airing after The Drew Carey Show began outperforming it. Younger viewers tuned out. Older viewers who had been loyal for years switched to other programs. ABC was left in an impossible position. The network was legally forced to purchase highly expensive episodes that the general public was no longer watching. $3 million per episode for a show that had lost its audience. The math did not work. The network was bleeding money, and there was nothing they could do about it, except wait for the contract to expire. The contract was a disaster of the network's own making. ABC had been so afraid of losing the Drew Carey Show that they had locked themselves into a deal that would eventually destroy it. The show was not canceled because it was bad. It was canceled because it had become too expensive to justify keeping on the air. The same creative ambition that had made it special had also made it a financial liability, and the network executives who had signed the disastrous contract were not going to admit their mistake. But the contract nightmare was not the only problem plaguing the Drew Carey Show in its final years. Behind the scenes, cast members were struggling with their own demons, and some of those struggles would spill into the public eye in ways that the producers could not control. The hidden struggles of the cast members. In 2002, core cast member Krista Miller, who played Kate O'Brien as Drew's primary love interest, abruptly chose to leave the show. Her departure was a shock to both the creative team and the fans. The reason for her exit was not a dispute over money or creative direction. She left to take a recurring role on Scrubs, a comedy created by her husband, Bill Lawrence. The opportunity was too good to pass up, and Miller made the professional decision to move on. but her absence left a hole in the center of The Drew Carey Show that the writers struggled to fill. The romantic and social dynamic that had been built over nearly a decade was suddenly gone, and the ensemble cast felt off balance without her. While Miller's departure was a professional choice, Drew Carey himself was fighting battles that were far more serious. During the production of the series, Carey privately battled severe, long-term clinical depression. The man who made millions of people laugh every week was struggling to find reasons to keep living. He later revealed that he had survived 2 separate drastic attempts due to his mental health. The first occurred when he was just 18 years old, while the second happened much later, during the ongoing career pressures of making a hit television show. The fame and the money did not protect him from the darkness. If anything, they made the isolation worse. In August of 2001, right in the middle of chaotic production retooling as the show was trying to recover from declining ratings, Carey suffered acute chest pains on set. He was rushed to the hospital for emergency coronary angioplasty surgery to clear a completely blocked artery. The procedure was successful, but the scare was a reminder that his body was under the same strain as his mind. The lead actor of a top television show was physically falling apart, and the crew watched in worried silence as he returned to work just days after leaving the hospital. The production also faced a censorship scandal that has rarely been discussed. In Season 2, the show filmed an episode titled Two Drews and the Queen of Poland Walk into a Bar. The episode featured guest star Dan Castellaneta, best known as the voice of Homer Simpson, in a supporting role. After the episode aired, ABC executives decided that Castellaneta's entire character performance was highly offensive and culturally insensitive. Rather than simply pulling the episode, the network made a more unusual decision. They completely scrubbed and edited his scenes out of later syndication prints, removing his performance entirely while leaving his name in the credits. Viewers who watched the episode in reruns saw a version that had been surgically altered, and most of them never knew why. To patch the void left by Krista Miller, producers brought in Cynthia Watros to play a new character named Kelly Newmark. The hope was that fresh energy would revitalize the show and give audiences a reason to keep watching. But fans and critics widely rejected the chemistry between Waitrose and the rest of the cast. The character felt forced. The jokes did not land. And behind the scenes, morale slumped as the cast realized they were simply playing out a contractually forced series that no one really believed in anymore. The actors showed up, delivered their lines, and went home. The joy that had defined the early seasons was gone. The problems kept piling up. Miller was gone. Carey was struggling with his health and his depression. The network was censoring episodes. The new cast members were not clicking, and the show was still costing ABC $3 million per episode to produce. The executives who had signed the disastrous contract were looking for a way out, and they were not going to find one until the deal expired. But the show still had to fill its time slots, and the producers still had to make episodes. However, the desperate attempts to save The Drew Carey Show would only create more problems. The tragic end of The Drew Carey Show. By Season 8, which ran from 2002 to 2003, the financial hemorrhage had become impossible to ignore. The series was costing ABC millions in net losses per week. The advertising revenue that the show generated was a fraction of what it had been during its peak years, but the licensing fee that ABC was legally required to pay Warner Brothers remained stuck at $3 million per episode. ABC was paying top dollar for a show that was drawing bottom-tier ratings, and the losses were eating into the network's overall profitability. Because the contract was legally ironclad, ABC could not legally cancel the show outright or stop production without incurring immense legal penalties from Warner Bros. The network was trapped. They had to keep making episodes, and they had to keep airing them, because the contract required them to fill time slots with the show that was bleeding them dry. To minimize financial damage while still fulfilling the episode orders, ABC executives began moving the show rapidly around the schedule. The logic was simple. If the show was going to lose money regardless of when it aired, at least they could use it to plug holes in underperforming nights. But the constant shuffling was devastating to whatever remained of the show's audience. The series was shoved across Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Wednesdays, sometimes airing in different time slots on the same night of the week from one month to the next. Loyal viewers who wanted to watch the show had to hunt for it, and most of them eventually gave up. The network had effectively destroyed the show's remaining audience through sheer scheduling chaos. For the final 9th season, ABC took the degradation one step further. The network pulled the show completely off the standard fall and winter primetime calendar. There was no September premiere, no promotional campaign, no announcements to the press. ABC simply stored the remaining episodes in a vault and waited for the right moment to dump them. That moment turned out to be the summer. The network aired the remaining episodes in back-to-back blocks during July, August, and September, historically dead television months, where networks usually dump projects that they want to die unwatched. Summer television is where shows go to be forgotten, and the Drew Carey Show was being sent there to expire in peace. The final 2 episodes of the series were burned off with 0 promotional budget and 0 network fanfare on September 8, 2004. There were no series finale commercials, no reunion specials, no interviews with the cast reflecting on 9 years of memories. The episodes simply aired, and then the show was gone. Most casual fans of the series had no idea that the show had even finished its run or aired its ending. They tuned in one week to find something else in the time slot, and they assumed that the show had been canceled months earlier. They did not know that the finale had come and gone without anyone noticing. To make matters worse, the show's famous musical numbers were not just creatively ambitious. They were financially unprecedented for a 1990s sitcom. A single cold open sequence like the elaborate Cleveland Rocks or 5 o'clock world routines frequently cost Warner Brothers production between $500,000 and $1 million just to film. That was just for one sequence. These productions utilized hundreds of professional background dancers and complex choreography shot on location, not on a simple studio soundstage. The cost of a single musical cold open was more than what some entire sitcom episodes cost to produce on other networks. The show was bleeding money on ambition, and the network was starting to notice. To prove that the show was not a standard stale sitcom, the production pulled off 3 separate Drew Live episodes across seasons 5, 6, and 7. Instead of pre-recording the episodes with multiple takes and edits, the cast performed the entire episode completely live. There was no safety net. If someone forgot a line, the audience saw it. If a prop failed, the audience saw that too. But here is the part that made the logistics insane. Because of time zone differences, the cast performed the entire episode 3 separate times in one night. They did a live show for the East Coast broadcast. Then, a few hours later, they did the exact same show live for the Central Time Zone. Then, a few hours after that, they did it again for the West Coast. 3 complete performances of the same episode, all in one night, all without a script safety net. The cast was exhausted, the crew was exhausted, and the producers, who had to approve the budgets, were horrified at the overtime cost. The show also pioneered a hybrid filming method that made production even more unpredictable. Writers left blank spaces in the script marked with a single word: improv. The actors were expected to fill those spaces with something funny, something spontaneous, something that had never been rehearsed. Ryan Stiles, Diedrich Bader, and Drew Carey, who were already working together on Whose Line Is It Anyway, were masters of this format. They could invent dialogue on the spot that was funnier than anything the writers could have prepared. But the camera crew had no idea what was coming. They had to predict the actors' movements in real time, guessing where the jokes would go and where the action would move. Sometimes they got it right. Sometimes they missed the shot entirely. Either way, the result was unlike anything else on television, but it was also unlike anything else in television accounting. But here is the part that does not make sense. The contract and the desperate attempts to save the show were only one piece of the puzzle. There were other forces working against the show, hidden problems that would eventually make it impossible for the Drew Carey Show to exist in the modern streaming era. The real reason the show disappeared is more complicated than bad ratings or a bad contract. The real reason the show disappeared. For nearly 20 years after the final episode aired, fans who wanted to revisit the Drew Carey Show had almost no options. The series was not available on any major streaming platform. It was not available for digital purchase on Amazon or iTunes. It did not air on cable rerun channels like Nick at Night or TV Land. The show had been a top 15 ratings powerhouse at its peak, drawing over 16 million viewers weekly, and yet it had vanished from the cultural landscape as if it had never existed. The reason for this disappearance was not ratings or network politics. It was music. When Warner Brothers Television originally negotiated the rights for the show's iconic pop soundtracks, the legal team signed contracts that strictly covered standard network television broadcasting. The agreements allowed the show to air on ABC and later in syndication on local stations. That was it. The main theme song, Cleveland Rocks by the Presidents of the United States of America, was licensed for broadcast. The opening sequence theme from the early seasons, 5 O'Clock World by the Vogues, was licensed for broadcast. Every single song that played in the background of every single episode was licensed for broadcast. The problem was that these contracts were written in the mid to late 1990s when streaming and digital downloads did not exist. DVD box sets were still a new and untested concept. The legal wording that seemed perfectly reasonable at the time completely failed to account for modern formats that had not yet been invented. The lawyers who drafted those contracts could not have predicted that people would one day watch television shows on their phones, or that viewers would expect to have every episode available at the touch of a button. They wrote for the world they knew, and that world was about to change forever. When home video and streaming exploded in the 2000s and 2010s, the music publishers who owned the rights to all those songs saw an opportunity. They demanded individual track-by-track royalty renegotiations for every single copyrighted song that appeared across all 233 episodes of The Drew Carey Show. This was not a small request. The show was famous for its elaborate musical sequences. Live bands performed on set, characters sang along to popular songs. The soundtrack was woven into the fabric of the series in ways that made it impossible to separate the music from the storytelling. The cumulative cost of clearing all those rights was staggering. Music publishers wanted per-episode fees, per-song fees, and ongoing royalties that would continue forever. Warner Brothers did the math and made a business decision. The cost of clearing the rights significantly outweighed the projected financial return of distributing an old sitcom that had been off the air for years. It was cheaper to do nothing. So the master tape sat in a legal vault, fully intact but completely inaccessible, locked away by a paperwork problem that no one had anticipated. For 2 decades, that was where The Drew Carey Show remained. The show existed only in memories, in old DVD rips that fans had recorded themselves, and in grainy clips uploaded to YouTube by people who refused to let it be forgotten. Every attempt to bring the show to streaming died on the vine because the music licensing costs made the project financially impossible. Warner Bros. Was not being malicious, they were being practical. The numbers did not work, and they were not in the business of losing money for nostalgia's sake. Then, in August of 2024, something unexpected happened. The free ad-supported platform Plex announced that it had secured the rights to stream The Drew Carey Show in its entirety for the first time ever. Fans who had been waiting for nearly 2 decades celebrated, but there was a catch. The show that arrived on Plex was not the show that had aired on ABC. To make the streaming release financially viable, the producers had to systematically strip out the iconic music tracks that had made the show so distinctive. The opening theme was no longer Cleveland Rocks. The dance sequences no longer featured the original songs. The live concert performances that had been a hallmark of the series were either removed entirely or replaced with generic, cheap, royalty-free elevator stock music that bore no resemblance to the original artistic vision. Landmark guest appearances, such as the live-action concert sequence featuring the band The Flaming Lips, became completely unwatchable on modern digital releases. The Flaming Lips had performed their own songs on the original broadcast. In the streaming version, those songs were gone, replaced by instrumental filler that the band had never heard. For casual viewers who had never seen the original broadcasts, the changes might not be noticeable. The dialogue is still there, the jokes are still there, the characters are still the same. But for fans who grew up watching The Drew Carey Show on ABC, the streaming version is a pale imitation of what the show used to be. The music was not just background noise, it was an essential part of the show's identity. Cleveland Rocks was not just a theme song, it was a mission statement. Removing it changed the fundamental character of the series. The show is finally available to stream, but it is not the show that fans remember. It is a compromised version, stripped of the soundtrack that gave it so much of its personality. The jokes still land, the characters still charm, but something is missing, and anyone who watched the original broadcasts can feel the absence. The Drew Carey Show was killed twice. First by a contract that made it too expensive for ABC to keep on the air. Then by music licenses that made it too expensive to bring back. The show survived both deaths, but it did not survive unchanged. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.